I used to live in the middle of nowhere. Now, this is not technically true. We had all the expectations of traditional suburban life. The various big box stores, a downtown, even some local universities. But as it came to game development, we did not have much. Sure, there were some makerspaces that would hold events maybe once a year. I'd have invited speakers, talk about software development. But for anyone who leaned more into independent development, God forbid, wanted to work on or talk about narrative games, we really were the middle of nowhere. The times I made the drive to the local game jam space, just 2 hours away, I felt like I was finding people like me. Even though it was a long drive there, it was worth it to spend some time talking about the games we were playing, what new tools we were using or learning, and what projects we were working on at the time. We could share our struggles and celebrate our small victories together. It was like finally being around people who understood me. For about a year, I also used to make a 4-hour drive to talk about interactive fiction. Once a month, there was a group who had been meeting for years, and, while surprised I would make the drive for it every time I did, were welcoming to me. We did play on a game every month, and talk about it during the meeting, which could last for up to 3 hours. We did talk through the monthly game story, any novel mechanics, and then settle on what new things or projects we had heard about. We shared things that excited us about interactive fiction. As I have gotten old, I do not always get to have those experiences anymore. I have had to move a few times. I have gotten older, and life too frequently keeps me busy or tired. But the lessons I learned in those groups are still important, and they are ones I try to impart to others starting with independent development and interested in making narrative games. Join a community. While I do not find myself with the time to make the long drives anymore, wanting to have some sense of belonging still stays with me. I try to seek out those who understand my struggles, who can give me advice about the paths I want to take and warn me before I take on a dangerous journey. As I have slowly settled into a teaching role in life, I tell my students, both those in the classroom and the rare person who asks for my advice outside of it, to find their people. I advise people to seek out groups, if possible, that can help them grow in their careers, paths, and hobbies. I tell them to find people who excite you and drive you to try out new things, to learn. If you cannot get that in person, try to find online groups that can be there for you. Support people who support you. I am an academic. I have worked for or attended universities for more than half of my life at this point. As part of that life, I have visited conferences and talked with people. I have sat in on committees and voted for things. There are lots of conferences and events for lots of things, but the best of them support their members. Good networks feed back into those who hold it up. I have told many people this exact same advice. Find conferences, events, or meetups that support your interests. If you like interactive fiction, go to things like AdventureX and NarraScope. For your research, balance between local and regional meetings. Look at what people are presenting on and talking about around you in your field. Academics, or what games people are publishing. Independent game development. Plug yourself into structures that will help you grow. Make things. Academics write. Developers code. People make. What do you like to do? Is how I start conversations with people who ask me for advice on what to do next in their life. It might be that academia is not the best for people, or that it could give them the structure they need to grow to their potential. The point always, regardless of place or situation, is to find at least one thing that you are passionate about. Maybe it is writing about games. Maybe it is making them. I try to warn some students that not everyone can get paid for passions, but that does not mean that they should not find passion in their work or hobbies. The only way, I have told game design students, to get better at game design is to do it. Professional writers, I have repeated to technical writing students over and over again, write every day. They practice and slowly improve their own work. You improve through doing. When it comes the time to engage and retain the player to your game, the player motivation is definitively one of the most important aspects to take in consideration. In fact, you will need a strong gameplay loop and a great reward system. The player motivation is really important. This will be what will trigger the player to engage and keep being engaged for long term into your game. The motivation is the action or the process of motivating someone by giving him the reason for doing and keep repeating some actions. What is a good motivation system in video games? A good motivation system for a video game is the one that will fill the player needs and drive them to engage themselves to keep playing the game. This is often defined as your core gameplay loop, the opera of your game. 3 levels of player X motivation. There are 3 types of motivation that should be applied to a video game. Those 3 types are identified by the time that the player invests in the game. We'll talk about the short-term, medium-term and long-term motivation. Short-term retention. The short-term motivation is what motivates the player to complete the current challenge. A short-term loop should be quick between 0 to 60 seconds for a AAA title, and the quicker it is for a mobile game, the better it will be. The order will be repetitive for the player, and should be integrated into your core gameplay loop. Short-term motivation example. Here is an example of a short-term motivation. A player in Zelda BOTW. In this example below, the order that will be repetitive player action in the game. To be clearer, your short-term motivation order is the core gameplay loop that will become repetitive for your player. You must prototype this loop during your conception process, and massively iterate on it until it becomes frictionless and fun to play. When this is done and you succeed to prove the fun of it, then you can move on to the next steps. Find a medium-term motivation. Most of the AAA games that the player explores the first short-term motivation loop within the first minute of the game. However, this number can be counted in just a few seconds. If you work on a mobile game, do not expect to get strong D1 retention if you do not succeed to deliver a strong and fun short-term loop to your new player. Midterm motivation. The midterm retention can also be defined as what will motivate the player to complete the current chapter, level, or mission. The midterm motivation loop must be clear and understandable by the player during the FTUE. Again, the time will differ depending on whether you work on AAA games or on mobile game. For the AAA games, the player can complete that midterm loop within a 20 minutes time frame. If you do not succeed to give to the player a strong understanding and amazing experience of what will make them continue playing the game, there is a big chance that you will lose that player forever. For free-to-play mobile games, we are talking more about the time between 5 to 7 minutes. Mobile gamers are more volatile than AAA gamers. You must hook them fast. The fact that they do not pay to play the game means that they are less tolerant of any friction that can be found in the game. Midterm motivation example. Here is an example of a midterm motivation. A player in Zelda BOTW. In this example below, the player must progress well to reach the point where they can activate the tower that will allow them to navigate quicker than before. This tower also gives them a more detailed map. Another midterm retention example can be the mini-boss fight in Zelda BOTW. I consider it as a midterm goal, even though that does not respect the 20 minutes rule. This is to show you that the 20 minutes rules for AAA can be longer over time, especially if this means that it is linked to a different game mechanic. Your midterm motivation will be the motivation that will keep the player engaged to progress through the game. In Zelda BOTW, the game designer have clearly built the game, so the end of a midterm motivation is linked to the discovery of a new area to explore. This is a smart hook that can also be seen in other games. For a free-to-play game, most of the midterm motivation mechanics are handled by the game system, more than directly gameplay mechanic. For example,